beer, it's good for you.
Hello and welcome to the video. Within this video I'll be sharing my favourite New England IPA recipe of this year with you. As someone who really loves this beer style, it is one that I'm constantly experimenting with to reach new heights. The focus this year was to bring something big on hop taste as usual, but lower in hops to keep costs as low as possible without compromising the end result. As with all of my recipes, this one has been tweaked until it is up to my standard, and I am now proud to share it with you. Within this video I will not only be sharing the recipe, but also my methods from start to finish of brewing and fermenting this one. Then I will finish off with a look and tasting of the resulting beer. So let's get started. Let's begin with a look at this recipe's vital statistics. As you can see, the recipe offers an approximate ABV of 7%. It's not that you would taste this though, due to how hoppy, fruity and juicy this one is. The BU-GU ratio shown here shows the relationship between bitterness and alcohol at 0.52, making this one well balanced for the style and very easy drinking. This recipe, like the vast majority of my shared recipes, has been written and designed by me and has gone through various stages of development and tweaking to reach its current state, which gets my full approval, so please do brew this one with confidence. The recipe can be found in full within the video's description, which is underneath the video window when viewed on a desktop computer. You will also find a link there to the full recipe on Brewfather, which can be used free of charge with some restrictions. I strongly suggest that you fully convert the recipe before ordering in your ingredients so that you're actually brewing the recipe as intended. I also suggest that you brew this recipe as it is the first time, rather than tweaking it, as I have done lots of tweaks already to bring this recipe into a very good shape. I have an easy guide to recipe conversion using Brewfather on my channel as shown on screen now. Within this video, this recipe is being brewed using a G40 brewing system from Grainfather to the volume of 21 litres or 5.55 US liquid gallons, but as part of the conversion process this can be scaled and shaped to suit your own brewing system and volume requirements. Shown on screen is the water profile that I recommend for using with this recipe. This is the same profile that I've used since day one of this recipe's development. This hoppy profile is ideal for this beer where we want to accentuate hoppy qualities. Using the right water profile is very important. After all, beer is mostly water and its balance is vital so that it suits the beer that you are brewing. Brewfather also has very good documentation on how to use the software to make the necessary water changes too. This makes the whole process very easy, so as such I suggest that all brewers start treating their brewing water as soon as possible for the very best of end results. You may well be surprised how easy this actually is. Let's now move to the brew, and this starts by preheating our mash water to the temperature of the first mash step before then adding and stirring in our grain. Here I am using a manual method which involves a grain scoop and a wooden mash paddle. By adding a small amount of grain with the scoop and stirring, we can ensure that every grain is wet and that there are no clumps. Rushing this process is not advised because it will impact your mash efficiency, which then has a negative impact on the rest of your brew. I have now added and carefully stirred in all of the grain, and it is time to start the mash. Here is the mash schedule for this brew, which is somewhat a standard middle of the road profile, which is ideal for this one. If we made the mash in temperature lower, then this would result in a thinner, more fermentable wort, leading to a drier beer, and if we made the first temperature higher, then this would result in a thicker and less fermentable wort, leading to a sweeter beer. However, for this beer style, a middle profile is desired. Let's now watch the various stages of the mash, and at the same time I will take you through all of the fermentables for this brew. This is a very effective and well-known grain bill design for today's New England IPA beers that works very well, so you will recognise it from some of my previous recipes. The Morris, Otter and Pilsner are used at 35% each to make up the main fermentables and offer a nice canvas of variation between flavour and crispness. I strongly suggest using as high quality base malts here as possible for the best end result, hence why I'm using Morris Otter for example. The oats and wheat provide texture and some flavouring along with head retention, but their combination of use creates a more stable haze that can last for the life of the beer if you choose to skip clarity measures, which is in keeping with this beer style of course. The Carapils provides a little extra colour and head retention along with extra body but no flavour whatsoever, whereas the acid malt is there purely to move pH downwards as part of my water profile. Ideally you want to have a mash pH of 5.2, but as much as 5.4 is okay too. If you would rather control this by other means, then simply split this 5% between the Morris Otter and the Pilsner malt. After mash in and mash out, I performed a slow and steady sparge manually as shown. This is another of the brew steps that is best to have some patience with and certainly not skip. It is going to be a variable as to how much of the sugars are trapped within the grain bread, so a slow and steady sparge will at the very least ensure that your efficiency numbers will be on point. It was then time for the boil phase. The first task here is to stir in the protein found on top. This will take a few minutes usually, and for me is one of the more relaxing parts of the brew in fact. This is very important as it will protect us against a dreaded boil over and allows the top protein to break up and drop to the bottom of the brewing system. Importantly, this keeps the protein within our beer where it belongs. Some remove this thinking it will help with clarity, but the truth is that you can keep it in and still get crystal clear beer if that is your aim. Naturally, this is a hazy beer style, but this is good information to know in general anyway. Shown on screen now is some boil information for this recipe. For this one I am using my usual 30-minute modern boil time, but as you can see no hops are going into it until the end of the boil. To chill down the wort for the 85 degrees Celsius top stand, I'm using my immersion chiller which is made by Jaded Brewing. These immersion chillers are super fast and I can reduce from boiling temps to hopstand temperatures in less than 1 minute. By stirring around the chiller you certainly speed up the process greatly, so this is well worth doing with any type of immersion chiller. Once you're at the hopstand temperature you can then remove the immersion chiller and add in your hops. This makes cleaning the immersion chiller much easier and naturally its work is already done. I'm doing some big circular stirs here to simply get the hops wet so that they will drop, but this is not intended to be a whirlpool because this system has a false bottom, so as such does not need a whirlpool. The hops used in this hopstand are Citra, Galaxy and Mosaic. Here is a look at where these all fall hop profile wise courtesy of Hop Control software. As you can see there are some core overlaps here, but Citra shown in orange pushes the citrus and floral aspects further. Galaxy shown in blue is pushing the tropical fruit and Mosaic shown in green is pushing berry, resin and pine and grassy notes. In terms of the fruit content here you have strong tropical fruit along with grapefruit, citrus, peach, passion fruit, lemon and lime, berry and tangerine. Certainly the combination of Citra, Galaxy and Mosaic is a very nice one. After the whirlpool I then resumed the cooling using the Grainfather supplied counterflow chiller. It was soon time to transfer into my fermenter, which in this case is the Grainfather conical fermenter. I then pitched this recipe's yeast, which is a co-fermentation using Verdant IPA yeast and White Labs Californian ale yeast. This yeast combination was used throughout this recipe's development and certainly works very well. However, I suspect that other yeast types for this style could also be used if preferred, like for example Lalawan's new IPA strain Pomona could replace Verdant for an even greater tropical contribution, and Fermentis US05 for example could be used for its high attenuation rate too. When using the Verdant and California ale yeast combination, a fermentation temperature of 23 degrees Celsius and 73 degrees Fahrenheit is suggested and is likely to ferment out within 7 days. This recipe also requires dry hopping with the same hop combination as used in the brew for the hop stand. This is performed at the rates shown on screen in both metric and imperial measurements. Add your dry hops when you are between 5 to 10 gravity points away from your predicted final gravity. I have tried all methods of dry hopping, but frankly nothing so far has had as good results, and there is no need to buy a book either. The very most important thing here is to keep things clean and sanitary, so here is a guide to doing that in a way that has never failed me so far in hundreds of brews. In this example I'm going to use a hop sock, but the procedure is similar with other container types. This starts with boiling the bag. I strongly recommend doing this no matter if the bag has been previously used and cleaned or if it's a brand new one straight out of the packaging. I then add this bag into a clean container and add sanitizer as a further safeguard. This will be the same container that I used to load the hops into. After this point I then wash and sanitize my hands, and this is repeated if I need to touch the bag after touching anything that is not clean and sanitary. These are very important steps to avoid contamination, which is all too common when it comes to homebrewers making IPAs because of this step. I then carefully add the dry hops with the bag lining the container, being sure that nothing touches the bag except for the hops. Once you have loaded all of your hops into the bag, then be sure to tie a nice strong knot to keep all of the hops contained. This loosely fitting hop bag, so there is room to expand, can now be added into your fermenter. In terms of contact time, 3 days is usually going to be plenty, but 5 days is fine too. I would avoid times more than a week to avoid grassy off flavours though. Let's now take a look at the finished beer, starting with the pour, and after this I will give you my tasting notes. You can see that the pour is a hazy golden colour, but once in the glass the end beer is a sunburst orange colour, just as you would expect for this beer style. This beer is in its natural state and no attempts have been made to clear it, which is in keeping with the New England IPA style. This beer has been under 12 psi of pressure, which is 0.83 bars, and I'm using this pressure for serving too. The example you see here is around the 4-week point from kegging and has conditioned flavour-wise very nicely in this time, though like most hoppy beers it was in a very drinkable state after enough time to carbonate it in the keg. Let's now go through my tasting notes, starting with aroma. Aroma. The aroma here is led with citrus and tropical notes along with pine. Flavour. This one is very fruity and juicy on entry with citrus and tropical flavours in the front. I also detect passion fruit, peach, lemon and pineapple in the middle, but this varies as you get further down the glass with lime and tangerine also featuring quite strongly. The finish here is very smooth and easy. And here are some notes from me about this recipe. Despite this recipe having less hops, this has at no point led to compromise. It was a case of finding the right hops and optimizing them. I found the use of hop control software to be very useful and time-saving in this process. My final impression here is that this is a very tropical, fruity and juicy New England IPA that hits all the spots without such a high hop bill. As always, I would love to see your tasting notes in the comments section of this video once you have it ready for tasting. I just ask that you include the beer's age when doing so. I do hope that you found this video useful, informative and interesting. If so, why not consider liking and subscribing? For further support you can join the channel's Facebook group, and if you would like to support the channel then check out the channel's merchandise store, as all profits go back into the channel. Until next time, happy brewing!